everybody, my name is Miss Vanessa, and I'd like to welcome you guys to another episode of STEAM Online. So today, in honor of Halloween coming up, I have a fun experiment that I wanted to conduct. I want to see if all of these candies here can float or if they're going to sink to the bottom of our container here. So a big part of science experiments are creating a hypothesis. A hypothesis is when you guess what the outcome of the experiment is going to be before you do the experiment. So today I am going to create a hypothesis for each one of our candies on whether it's going to sink or it's going to float. So I'll show you guys each one of the candies that I have, and then I'm going to take a guess and see what I think is going to happen. So here I have a sheet and it's got all of our candies listed. So I'm going to write down if I think it's going to sink or if I think it's going to float. And then I'm going to test it out and we'll see if I was right on my guesses. So let's get started with our first piece of candy. The first piece of candy on my list is a Reese's peanut butter cup. And personally, I think a Reese's peanut butter cup is gonna float because a Reese's cup is kind of shaped almost like a boat. So I would assume that a Reese's peanut butter cup would stay to the top. So I'm gonna say it's gonna float on my list here. My next piece of candy is Reese's Pieces. So unlike a Reese's peanut butter cup, I think Reese's Pieces are probably going to sink to the bottom because they're a little bit heavier. So I'm gonna put a sink on my sheet. And then the next thing I have on my list is a Milky Way. And personally, I think Milky Ways are more airy. So if I break off a piece of this, I think it's actually probably gonna float. So I'm gonna put float as my hypothesis for that one. And the next thing that I have on my list is fruit snacks. And I think fruit snacks are actually probably gonna float because they're like little gummy treats. So I'm gonna put float for that. And the next thing on my list is Skittles. So Skittles, like Reese's Pieces, I don't think are actually going to float at the top. I think they're gonna sink right away. So for for Skittles rather, I will put sink. Now, the next thing on my list is Gummy Bears. And I think Gummy Bears are really similar to fruit snacks, so I thought fruit snacks would float. I think Gummy Bears are probably gonna float. The next thing on my list is Whoppers. I think Whoppers are also a very airy snack, so I think Whoppers are probably gonna float. So I'm gonna put float on my hypothesis. And my last piece of candy is an Almond Joy. So for an Almond Joy, it's kind of tough because it's kind of just a more airy snack, but also it's a little more firm because it has chocolate covering over it. So I think I'm gonna say that it's gonna float. Okay, so now that I have my hypothesis down, I think I can actually test this out here. I'll show you guys my two sheets here. Here I have all of the candies that I am gonna test out, and here are all of the hypotheses that I believe are gonna happen during our experiment. So now we get to test out and see if all those things are actually gonna happen. So let's get started with that. Okay, so I'm all ready to get started. The first thing that was on my list was a Reese's, and I thought that it was going to float. So now it's time to test it. Let's see if a Reese's cup actually floats. So my Reese's cup actually sank. So I am gonna write down on here that it actually sank instead of floated. So instead of an X, I put a check mark, and check mark means that that's the correct answer. So the next thing on my list was Reese's Pieces. So I thought Reese's Pieces would actually sink to the bottom. So I'm gonna take a couple of these and we'll see if they float or they sink. All right, so I think I was right on this one. They do sink to the bottom. The next thing on my list was a Milky Way. So I can't put this whole Milky Way in here, so I'm gonna break off a piece of the Milky Way. And I thought that a Milky Way would float. So let's see if I'm right about that. Nope, a Milky Way sank to the bottom as well. So I was wrong with that one. Now, next I have fruit snacks. And I'm gonna see if fruit snacks will sink or they float. So here is a fruit snack, and it sinks. So I was wrong with that one too. All right, the next thing on my list was Skittles. So let's see if Skittles will sink or float. I said that they were gonna sink. So here I have 2 Skittles, and they do sink. So I can put that they do sink, and I was right for that one. So the next thing I had is Gummy Bears, and I said that they were gonna float, but now I'm starting to think that they're gonna sink just like the fruit snacks did. So let's see. Yep, they do sink, so I was wrong with that one too. Okay, the next thing on my list is Whoppers, and I thought since they're a little more airy that they would float at the top. So we're gonna see if Whoppers float. All right, so I don't know if you guys can see this, but here at the tippy top I have one of my Whoppers floating. I'm gonna put all of these in there. But yeah, they try to sink down, but they float right back up. So Whoppers do float, and that's what I guessed, so that was right. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to test is my Milky Way. And I said that a Milky Way would float, but now I'm thinking it's probably gonna sink. But let's test it out. Yep, a Milky Way did sink to the bottom. So today I was able to create a hypothesis on what I believe was going to happen with these different pieces of candy in a bucket of water. So it turns out that a lot of candy actually sinks to the bottom of a thing of water. But you guys can actually try this at home. If you guys have a whole bunch of candy left over after Halloween, you can test and see what pieces of the candy you think are gonna sink and what pieces of candy you think are gonna float at the top. And it's really cool to be able to create a hypothesis, and it's really, really awesome when your hypothesis is right, but it's also really good to see when you are incorrect and why that might be. So for example, I thought a Almond Joy would stay at the top, but now that I think about it, an Almond Joy is actually really weighed down because of the almond in the middle. So it's really cool to be able to think about why things didn't work out the way you thought they would. So I had a lot of fun testing all of this out, and I'm probably going to have a bellyache after this because now I have all this open candy and obviously I have to eat it. So I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!